It is July 5th, 1991. In 7 countries, at exactly the same moment, bank doors are being locked from the outside. London, New York, Hong Kong, Karachi, Luxembourg. Employees show up for work and cannot get in. Customers line up outside and nobody answers. No warning, no announcement, no explanation. One day their money was there. The next day it was not. $23 billion. Gone overnight. And the people who lost it were not hedge funds or Wall Street firms. They were ordinary people. Families in Pakistan and Nigeria and Birmingham who trusted this bank because it told them it was built for them. Now here is the part that is going to stop you in your tracks. The men who ran this bank were not hiding. They were not some shadow network operating out of a basement. They were running the 7th largest private bank in the world. 400 branches, 72 countries, 1 million customers. And their client list included Pablo Escobar, Saddam Hussein, Manuel Noriega, and some of the most dangerous terrorist organizations on earth. All verified by the United States Senate. But none of that is the most insane part. The most insane part is who else was on that client list. And I am going to make you wait for it. Because when it lands, you need to understand exactly how we got there. This is the story of BCCI, the largest banking fraud in history. And the reason you have never heard of it is sitting inside the story itself. In 1972, a Pakistani banker named Aga Hassan Abedi had one idea that changed everything. He had just had his own bank seized by the Pakistani government overnight. No negotiation? Just gone. And that experience gave him a question that would haunt him for the rest of his life. If governments can reach into any bank and take what they want, how do you build a bank they cannot touch? The answer was architecture. Register it in Luxembourg for secrecy. Headquarter it in London. Audit it in one country. Operate it in another. Make it so scattered across so many jurisdictions that no single regulator on earth could ever see the whole machine. He built it that way deliberately, from day one. Then he went out and sold something real. A bank for the developing world. The bank for the people Western institutions had always ignored. And honestly, in the beginning, it worked. Ordinary workers sent money home through it. Small businesses got credit for the first time. Governments banked with it. By the 1980s, BCCI had 400 branches, 16,000 employees, and was one of the most trusted financial institutions in the world. But here is what those ordinary depositors never knew. BCCI was never profitable. Not really, not ever. The loans were bad, the investments were worse. The gap between what it owed and what it actually had was growing every single year. So the bank did what every failing institution does when it cannot admit the truth. It used new deposits to cover old losses. And when you need money desperately enough, you stop asking where it comes from. This is where the story becomes something else entirely. Manuel Noriega, the military dictator of Panama, needed somewhere clean to put his drug money. BCCI said yes. His personal banker inside the institution managed $23 million of criminal proceeds out of the London branches, and he knew exactly what every dollar was. Pablo Escobar and the Medellin Cartel were generating so much cocaine money they physically could not count it fast enough. They needed a bank. BCCI did not stumble into this. According to the United States Senate investigation, BCCI had officers whose specific job was to go out and recruit drug money. They hunted for it. When one of those officers was later told by a federal agent that his clients were some of the biggest drug dealers in South America, his documented response was this: "It is not any business of mine who your customers are." Saddam Hussein used BCCI to purchase weapons and military technology while evading international controls. Documents seized from BCCI's own offices showed the bank arranging sales of military aircraft to Iraq as part of Saddam's buildup before the Gulf War. Abu Nidal, at that time one of the most wanted terrorists alive, moved money through BCCI accounts to finance operations across multiple countries. Dictators, drug lords, terrorists, all in the same bank. And then, the client that makes this story something different entirely. And the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States of America, the CIA maintained accounts at BCCI. They used its branches in Pakistan to funnel billions of dollars to covert operations in Afghanistan. They used it to move money that could never be traced back to the American government. And they knew what BCCI was. The Senate investigation found the CIA had detailed knowledge of BCCI's criminal operations by at least 1985. They said nothing. Think about what that actually means. The same bank washing Pablo Escobar's cocaine money was being used by American intelligence to run Cold War operations. Drug cartel funds and CIA operational funds sitting in the same institution. Every single one of those clients served by the same infrastructure, and the people at the top of the United States government knew and kept quiet. Now watch what happened when investigators tried to get close. Senator John Kerry started looking into BCCI as early as 1986. His team was blocked at every turn. The FBI stalled. The Federal Reserve delayed. The Justice Department in Washington, Miami, and Tampa actively obstructed access to evidence. The Senate report documented that in at least one case, a federal prosecutor flat out lied to investigators about the existence of critical documents. The machine built to stop financial crime was protecting this one. There was exactly one person who refused to stop. Robert Morgenthau, Manhattan District Attorney, older, stubborn, completely unbothered by what Washington wanted him to do. He opened his own investigation in 1989. He was denied records. He was told to back off. He kept going. Before Morgenthau could close it down, something else cracked it open first. Federal agents had spent 2 years running an undercover operation called Operation Sea Chase, infiltrating the money laundering network running through BCCI's Tampa office. To bring everything to a head, they did something almost cinematic. They staged a fake wedding. They invited their BCCI contacts, the cartel connections, the money launderers, all to the same party in Tampa, Florida. When the guests arrived, federal agents were waiting. 9 BCCI officials were arrested at the reception. 81 people were indicted worldwide. BCCI pleaded guilty to money laundering and paid a $15 million fine. And then the bank stayed open. Sit with that for a second. The 7th largest private bank in the world was caught red-handed laundering cocaine money. It pleaded guilty in federal court. It paid a fine that amounted to less than 0.1% of its total assets. And then it went back to work. Because the fine was not punishment. It was a cost of doing business. And somewhere at the top, the message was clear. There are people connected to this bank that powerful governments are not ready to expose. By 1990, even BCCI's own auditors, Price Waterhouse, were finding transactions they could only describe as false and deceitful. The founder had already suffered a heart attack and quietly disappeared from view. Without him, the machine started shaking. In March of 1991, the Bank of England ordered a full independent investigation. Price Waterhouse produced a report they called internally the Sandstorm Report. It was over. The entire bank had been fabricating transactions for years, using fresh deposits to pay returns to older customers. A Ponzi scheme hiding inside 400 branches and 2 decades of respectability. On July 5, 1991, regulators in 7 countries moved at exactly the same moment. Every BCCI branch on Earth was locked in a single coordinated action. One day it was the 7th largest private bank in the world. The next day it did not exist. And here is what breaks your heart about this. The people who lost everything were not the cartels, not the dictators. They had already moved their money. The people who lost everything were the ones Abedi had promised to protect. The teacher in Karachi who saved for 20 years. The family in Birmingham sending money home to relatives. The small business in Lagos that had trusted BCCI because it was the only international bank that had ever bothered to open near them. 6,500 depositors. Wiped out overnight. $9.5 billion. Gone. So what happened to the people responsible? Abedi, the man who designed a bank specifically to be untouchable, was indicted in the United States. He was never extradited. Never tried. He died in Karachi in 1995 at the age of 73, in his own bed, free. The CIA officials, whose agency used a criminal bank for covert operations, were never charged. Their names remain classified to this day. Robert Morgenthau, the one man who refused to stop, stood in a New York courtroom in July of 1991 and said 7 words that have never really been answered. He called BCCI a criminal enterprise masquerading as a bank. He was right. It just took the rest of the world 19 years to admit it. The Senate report ended with a warning. BCCI was not an accident. It was a proof of concept. It showed exactly how a financial institution could be built across enough jurisdictions, with enough political cover, serving enough powerful interests, that it could operate as the world's financial sewer for 2 decades without being stopped. And the systems that made it possible, the secrecy laws, the fragmented oversight, the willingness of governments to use criminal infrastructure when it suits them, none of that went away when the doors closed on July 5, 1991. The bank died. The lesson never got learned. That is BCCI, the biggest banking fraud in history. Pablo Escobar and the CIA and Saddam Hussein all sharing the same bank, while ordinary people trusted it with their life savings. Hidden in plain sight, because the people powerful enough to stop it were too busy using it. If you want more stories like this one, subscribe to Capital Crimes. Every week we find the financial crime that should have been front-page news and was buried instead. Because the stories they do not want you to find are always the ones worth knowing. Capital Crimes, where money meets crime.